Good evening. I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, shutdown victory. President Trump taking a victory lap as more than 30 Democratic senators join nearly all Republicans in a vote to end the three-day government shutdown. The House voting moments ago to end the impasse. So it's done. Now, the deal was done in Congress, and it was done by senators. That's who made the deal. The president, frankly, was silent. And today, President Trump only issued a brief statement, which said in part, quote, "I am pleased that Democrats in Congress have come to their senses and are now willing to fund our great military, border patrol, first responders, and insurance for vulnerable children." The short-term spending deal came after Mitch McConnell, majority leader, declared his, quote, intention to hold a debate on the Dreamers in the coming weeks. That's it. Intention to hold a debate in a few weeks. There is no formal mechanism to force McConnell to do this. It is simply his intention. And some progressives are livid, saying the minority leader Chuck Schumer completely caved. Think about it this way. If McConnell lives up to his intention, he will bring the Dreamer issue to the floor. Is that a victory? Well, why will Republicans work with Democrats on this issue when they have not done so before? Here's one thing we know. The president's current view on the Dreamer issue, and overall the immigration issue, is to link immigrants to murder. Here's his ad released this weekend.
President Trump is right. Build the wall. Deport criminals. Stop illegal immigration now. Democrats who stand in our way will be complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants.
Illegal immigrants murder Democrats. If that's what the president thinks, it is very hard to imagine he would sign legislation allowing the 700,000 plus Dreamers who were brought to America as children through no choice of their own to stay in America. Now, here's what's amazing. You just heard that ad, right? So it's not the president's voice. And the White House is trying to distance Trump from the ad, saying it's being released by a, quote, outside group. The outside group is the Trump re-election campaign. And in case you did not see the full ad, let me just make it loud and clear who is behind it. Here's the last words in the ad.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Okay, case in point. Now, the shutdown may be over, but in reality, the countdown clock has simply been reset. Today's agreement is now up in 17 days. Pamela Brown is out front tonight at the White House. And Pamela, what is the mood there tonight? You know, we had thought the president may come out and speak after the vote, sort of take credit for this, but no.
No, that's true. You would think that perhaps there would be some sort of victory lap from the president. We're told that that is not part of the plan right now. But inside the White House, there is certainly a sense that the strategy worked. The strategy of saying that the immigration bit would be different from keeping the government running and funding it. In fact, I was told by one White House official that throughout the day today, there have been congratulations exchange with Mark Short, the legislative director. But of course, Aaron, this could be a short-lived victory depending on what happens over the next few weeks once funding runs out. Once again, it's unclear what could be worked out within that time frame. But it is interesting to note, as you said, how low of a profile the president has kept over the last few days. Now, White House officials say he was busy behind the scenes. He was making calls to Republicans. But you would think that perhaps now that this has been done, that the Senate was able to get the votes it needed, that he might come out and face the cameras. We're told that's not going to happen. It's unclear as to why that is. One official said that it's because, they don't want it to make it about him. But it's still a little questionable. You heard Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, say today that the great negotiator has been on the sidelines. We'll have to wait and see how active of a role he plays over the next few weeks. If the Senate does come up with a DACA deal that passes through the Senate, will the president be more active in terms of getting the House Republicans on board? That is still an open question tonight, Aaron.
All right. Thank you very much, Pamela. And out front now, the Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley. Senator, thanks for your time. You stood your ground. You are not one of the Democrats who came around and voted for this. You voted no. Why?
Well, because the Defense Department is saying that they can't sign contracts with these lengthy CRs. They wanted to see something very short, because also we know that the Republican leadership won't negotiate until the last 2 days during a continuing resolution. So therefore, what we're going to see is a couple weeks of wasted time, and I think the American people are very impatient. And certainly I wanted to send
a message. And then another shutdown?
Well, who knows what happens then? I guess it depends on which Trump shows up. Is it going to be the Tuesday Trump with the angel on his shoulder who says, I want a love immigration bill and bring me something and I'll sign it? Or is it going to be the Thursday version from 2 weeks ago who has Breitbart leading him around by the nose?
So let me ask you, in this deal, right, the government was shut for 3 days. And from my understanding, what has come out of it is exactly what the Republicans originally wanted, plus McConnell saying he has the intention to bring the Dreamer issue to the floor. Did Senator Schumer make a bad deal?
Well, it's a little more than that. Well, over the weekend, what we had was a group of Republicans who went to Mitch McConnell and said, "We demand a debate on the floor." And he promised to them, which is much more important than promising to us, that he would do that with a neutral bill with a full chance for both sides to offer amendments to basically create an immigration bill, which means we do have the opportunity that we succeeded in doing in 2013, where we came together, Democrats and Republicans, to forge a bipartisan bill. So that's the hope.
Right. So then why didn't you vote yes?
Well, for the reasons I said, we need really a short-term 3-day, and realize we repeatedly brought up this 3-day bill to keep the government open, but to force dedicated negotiations, not 2 or 2.5 weeks with doing nothing, and then negotiations.
So you're saying it's only going to negotiate immigration for 2 or 3 days anyway, so force the 2 or 3 days right now. That's the point you're making.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Look, this was all supposed to be done since October 1st of last year. But the Republicans were too busy with that health bill, trying to destroy health care for some 30 million Americans, and then the tax bill, which plundered the national treasury to deliver $1 trillion to the richest Americans, and they couldn't compel themselves to deal with the fundamentals of governing. A spending bill, addressing children's health care, addressing community health centers, and the opioid crisis.
So let's talk about this issue, though, because you raised children's health care. And Sarah Sanders today pointed out that is not only in this continuing resolution, but that other things in it
weeks.
Three-day bill to keep the government open, but to force dedicated negotiations, not 2 or 2.5 weeks with doing nothing, and then negotiations.
So you're saying it's only going to negotiate immigration for 2 or 3 days anyway, so force the 2 or 3 days right now. That's the point you're making.
Absolutely. Look, this was all supposed to be done since October 1st of last year. But the Republicans were too busy with that health bill, trying to destroy health care for some 30 million Americans, and then the tax bill, which plundered the national treasury to deliver $1 trillion to the richest Americans, and they couldn't compel themselves to deal with the fundamentals of governing. A spending bill, addressing children's health care, addressing community health centers, and the opioid crisis.
So let's talk about this issue, though, because you raised children's health care. And Sarah Sanders today pointed out that is not only in this continuing resolution, but that other things in it are also things that Democrats like you care deeply about. Here she is.
Look, I think that Democrats realized that the position that they had taken, frankly, was indefensible, and that they had to focus on, first, funding our military, protecting Border Patrol agents, funding vulnerable children through the CHIP program. These were things that they didn't disagree with. They agreed with everything that was in this CR.
And she brings up funding vulnerable children, which is what you just brought up. I mean, doesn't she have a point?
Well, our 3-day resolution, continuing resolution, also had the CHIP in it. And in fact, we've been fighting since last August to get this bill on the floor. This was forged in bipartisanship. It should have passed last September instantly, but they held it out as a bargaining chip in really a shameful practice of holding 800,000 children hostage.
So you're saying that you believe Senator McConnell because he made this promise to members of his own party, people including Jeff Flake and Lindsey Graham. Kamala Harris, your Democratic colleague, though, came out of the vote, and she told reporters she does not believe McConnell made any real commitment to deal with immigration. Do you think she could be right, or you truly do trust McConnell that he is going to bring this to the floor in fair debate?
I do not trust him at all. He has promised Lindsey Graham and Susan Collins, Jeff Flake, made promises, commitments that he has not honored. However, realize the Republicans control the presidency, Republicans control the Senate. The McConnell has decided to put the amendment box where we put amendments so that they can be brought up on the floor. He's decided to put his amendments in and then lock the box so that no Democratic amendment can be considered. That's why we couldn't even put up the bipartisan understanding we had with many members of the Republican Party for consideration. And so in that type of dictatorial control, we realize that our leverage is modest. We do hope to hold McConnell accountable for this promise, but I'm not sure that we will succeed.
So, look, you're being honest. You're saying your leverage is modest. You don't know if you can hold him to account. You don't trust him. So let me just put it to you straight, Senator. The Congressional Black Caucus Chairman, Cedric Richmond, today was very blunt. He said about Senate Democrats, talking about you guys, they are getting their butts kicked. Is he right?
Well, certainly we wanted to attach the DREAM Act and opioids and the community health centers to a must-pass bill that would get to the president's desk. We failed in that effort. Now we're on Plan B, which is to try to do what we did in 2013. Now, that plan did work in 2013, and we are going to carry that battle forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator. I appreciate your being so frank. Senator Merkley, thanks.
Thank you.
And our senior political analyst, Mark Preston, is out front. Mark, I have to say, at first he tried to say, well, the promise was to Lindsey Graham by McConnell, so he's trying to be optimistic. But then I thought he was even more frank later in the interview. I don't trust him. Our leverage is modest. I don't know if we're going to get anything.
Well, it just says a lot about how things are operating or not operating on Capitol Hill. But what is interesting is that he said we're going to hold them accountable. In some ways, and I'm going to throw something out at you, a curveball here. In some ways, Senate Democrats did House Democrats a big favor by agreeing to this, basically allowing House Republicans to pass this bill, this CR, this continuing resolution, for a couple more weeks. It allows the House Democrats, all of them who are up for re-election this year,
to vote against,
to take a stand and vote against it, of course.
That's interesting. So I guess it's a long-term, short-term strategy here when it comes to the midterms. So let me ask you, though, Mark, the president, I played the ad, right, where it's illegal immigrants and we're going to hold Democrats responsible for every murder they commit. The White House is trying to say an outside group did it, and then you hear Trump say, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message, just to make it loud and clear. That's the most recent thing he said about immigration. However, here he is speaking specifically about Dreamers earlier this month in one of the meetings Senator Merkley referred to, and during the campaign, to talk about the tale of two Trumps.
This should be a bipartisan bill. This should be a bill of love. Truly, it should be a bill of love, and we can do that. I will immediately terminate President Obama's illegal executive order on immigration. Immediately.
We're always talking about dreamers for other people. I want the children that are growing up in the United States to be dreamers also.
All right, Mark, so look, I mean, you put that together with the ad, and you hear Senator Merkley saying, well, we just don't know which president's going to show up. Which president is going to show up?
Well, who knows? I mean, it depends what happens tonight, depends what happens tomorrow. As someone said to me, a Republican said this to me, who's no fan of Stephen Miller, said, listen, Stephen Miller's the last person that whispers in his ear, and that's why we're in this problem right now. Republicans are not happy about this. If you look at polls right now, we know that overwhelmingly the majority of Americans want the DACA issue fixed. They want to take care of these dreamers. However, there's that small group of hardliners, specifically Stephen Miller, and in some cases the chief of staff right now, who are whispering in Trump's ear, as well as the likes of Senator Tom Cotton, and that's why he's stuck on this. But nobody knows how to negotiate with the president, Erin, because they don't know who's going to come to the door.
All right, Mark Preston, thank you very much. And Mark just said it, Stephen Miller and the other president's yes men. Are they the ones pushing a hard line on immigration and, frankly, winning? Plus, new pressure tonight to release a controversial memo in the Russia probe. Republicans claiming it proves FBI wrongdoing and bias to Democrats. And Trump's bragging about low unemployment among African Americans. Does he and will he get the credit at the voter box?
In need of great talent for your business, but short on time? You don't have to get lost in a huge stack of resumes to find your perfect hire. You just need the right tools, smarter tools. It can be challenging finding great talent to make your business successful. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/outfront. That's ZipRecruiter.com/outfront. One more time, to try it for free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/outfront.
New tonight, the influencer in chief. The White House is pushing back against the idea that it is the president's 32-year-old senior advisor, Stephen Miller, who is running the show when it comes to the president's completely inconsistent stance on immigration. When asked if Stephen Miller has veto power over any immigration deal today, Sarah Sanders said this.
The only person I'm aware of with veto power in this country is the president.
Tries to laugh it off, but it is not a laughing matter. It's a serious question. You just heard that discussed by Senator Merkley and by Mark Preston. Out front now, Paul Begala, former White House counselor to President Clinton, and Steve Cortez, who is head of President Trump's Hispanic Council, during the campaign, and also our newest political commentator. So, Steve, welcome to CNN. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right, Paul,
Thank you for having me.
Good. And so, Paul, let me start with you, though. You just wrote an op-ed for CNN.com on this topic, just published. Sanders, you just heard her say Stephen Miller is not running the show. Do you buy it?
No, the show, we thought the show was going to be The Apprentice. It turns out to be Who's the Boss? Look, I worked for a president. I was honored to serve President Clinton in the White House. Every president has to defer on some issues. So say if this were agriculture policy, and our president is a real estate developer from Manhattan, he has an agriculture secretary studied Purdue, I think it'd be wise for him to defer, frankly, to Secretary Perdue. But this is the president's signature issue. And on it, he has said many times that he would sign legislation to regularize the Dreamer status. And yet now he has flip-flopped, according to Senator Lindsey Graham, who was in the room, because Stephen Miller, the staff, yanks it back. So this we know who's running the show down there, and it's President Stephen Miller.
Steve?
Well, listen, I would say to that, Paul, as long as we're talking television shows, when you say President Stephen Miller, I would tell you that is as laughable and as fictional as the show Barney Miller. And I might be dating myself a little bit. You probably remember that. Aaron might be too young.
I'm thinking of a purple dinosaur.
To remember Barney Miller. But look, anyone who observes, which is everyone in America, who observes President Trump knows, whether it was from The Apprentice, candidate Trump, President Trump, knows this is not a man who easily cedes authority and control. And I happen to have the privilege of knowing him personally. So the idea that he would somehow give up control to a sort of second president or a pseudo president is, I think, honestly kind of laughable on its face. I think what's really going on here is the left realizes that they lost clearly in this showdown over the shutdown. And so what are they trying to do now? They're trying to create a boogeyman in Stephen Miller, somebody who is supposedly completely out of step with the American people. Except here's the problem. President Trump ran unambiguously on a program of controlling the border and reforming our immigration system as candidate. He was elected primarily probably on that basis, and now he's following through on it. So he may be out of step with the mainstream media. He might be out of step with a lot of the Senate.
All right,
but he's not out of step with
I understand you all disagree on the power that he has. I will point out even Republicans like Lindsey Graham are saying Stephen Miller has that power. But let's just put that table, whether he has the power or not, for a second, because sometimes it's not reality, but it's perception that matters. Paul, Stephen Miller is getting the same sort of headlines that upset the president so grievously when they applied to Steve Bannon. Okay, here's some of them. The Daily Beast, President Miller shutdown. Business Insider, some reports now referring to Miller as President Stephen Miller. Esquire, President John Kelly or co-president Stephen Miller. John Kelly, of course, the chief of staff. How damning are these headlines for Stephen Miller and John Kelly's future, Paul?
Well, there's some reporting already that General Kelly's looking for the exits, which I would not blame him. He's an American hero. I don't agree with him on issues, but he's an American hero and deserves our respect. Mr. Miller, I think slightly less of a hero, actually. He's a 32-year-old guy, worked on the Hill. That's fine. But what he has done, what's unprecedented, I never saw Steve Bannon overrule the president like this. The president sat down. We all saw it on national television. It was a remarkable meeting, right? For an hour, he sat in the cabinet room.
The Tuesday meeting, yeah.
Senator Dianne Feinstein of California said to him, would you sign what she called a clean DACA bill? That is, allow the Dreamers to stay with nothing else attached, no strings attached. The president said, yes, let me read you, it's in my column on CNN.com, exactly what he said. He said, yes, and then move to phase 2, which would be comprehensive immigration reform, but I think we need to do DACA first. That's the president speaking to a senator, making a deal until Steve Miller overruled it. I think it's certainly unprecedented in the Trump White House.
The idea that Stephen Miller, who I happen to really respect, but the idea that he is somehow Geppetto, that he's the puppeteer. Well, no, not just one of us. Actually, there's about 40 million of us who voted for President Trump,
and largely based on the agenda
that Stephen Miller laid out. In any case,
I don't like a staff guy overshadowing the president.
Hold on. The idea that he is somehow this puppeteer, that he's Geppetto, and that the president is Pinocchio, all right, is just an absurdity.
That's a good analogy.
He's an important voice. He's an important voice among many important voices. And by the way, Steve Bannon, good friend of mine, not the president. He would be the first to say there are many voices within the White House, often very disparate voices, as there are within the Senate. There's one president. There's one indispensable man who has the mandate of the American people, who is changing this country, by the way, particularly when it comes to the economy, for the better in ways that I think people in Washington can't even think about.
Steve Miller not only is being credited by Democrats and Republicans with having the final word on this, whether you want to say overruled or convincing or whatever. I'm not going to weigh in on the politics of it. He is passionate about immigration. He actually is the only one who's come out and take questions on immigration from the press. So this is clearly a signature issue. Here he is in a combative exchange with our own Jim Acosta in the press briefing room.
Aren't you trying to change what it means to be an immigrant coming into this country? If you're telling them you have to speak English, can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Well, first of all, right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you have to speak English.
Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, it's actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English.
It sounds like you're trying to engineer the racial and ethnic flow of people into this country.
Jim, that is one of the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said, and for you that's still a really... The notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting.
Combative, to say the least, Paul.
Gosh, to say the least, in that sense, I do think he's reflecting the president. It's a tragic thing. The majority of Americans believe our president is a racist. In the polling, right, in the Quinnipiac poll, over 50% of Americans think he prefers white people to non-white people. Why? Because he said so. He was in that infamous meeting in the Oval Office, and he said we need more immigrants from Norway and not from unflattering comment countries in Africa, the Caribbean, or Central America. That's just racist when you say you want more white immigrants and fewer brown immigrants. So in that sense, Mr. Miller is simply repeating the president's view, which is a tragically racist view.
Final word,
what's actually racist is telling minorities, and I say this as an Hispanic, is telling minorities at election time, we value you and we value your vote, and then forgetting about them in between and allowing them to live lives.
We just shut down the government for them. What do you mean forget about?
No. Did he for Hispanic Americans? No, he didn't. He shut down the government, the Democrats shut down the government for illegal immigrants. And by the way, illegal immigrants have done tremendous harm to the economic prosperity of legal Hispanic Americans, of legal African Americans. So what the president is doing is saying America first, no matter your creed, no matter your color, your economic prosperity,
Norway
your security
first,
is going to be my first priority. And by the way, there's nothing racist about that. That's actually the opposite of racist. It's saying we're not here to exploit you. We're here to improve your lives. All right. And that's what President Trump has done. That's why the economy is accelerating. It's why optimism abounds in this country right now. And it's why we have a bright future, whatever your color is.
All right. Thank you both. You'll get the last word because, Paul, you had the first. I appreciate both your time.
Thanks, Aaron.
And next, Republicans pushing harder tonight on that controversial memo alleging FBI wrongdoing in the Russia probe. So why won't they let the FBI see it and respond? And a new twist into Stormy Daniels' affair and her alleged relationship with Donald Trump. Did reports of a payoff to the porn star violate campaign laws? My guest is going to court.
You think I'm crazy?
A monster unleashed.
My God.
A man obsessed.
He's watching us.
A city in fear. Mondays on TNT, the hunt for pure evil begins.
Cold-blooded killers walk among us.
Based on the best-selling novel, Daniel Bruhl, Luke Evans, and Dakota Fanning.
What compels a man to do evil?
The Alienist, new limited series Mondays at 9/8 Central on TNT.
New tonight in the Russia investigation, House Republicans ramping up their push to release information tied to a memo spearheaded by House Intelligence Committee Chairman David Nunes. The memo accuses the FBI of wrongdoing during the 2016 campaign. And the memo claims it's the same. It says there was a bias towards Democrats. Democrats say the memo is full of partisan talking points and is nothing more than an attempt to distract from the Russia probe. Manu Raju is out front. And Manu, obviously, this memo and the hashtag release the memo has gotten national attention. What is the latest on the push to release it and what's in it?
Well, I am told, Aaron, by key Republicans tonight that they are pushing very hard to release this memo very soon, presumably as soon as next week when the House returns to session after a recess that it's taking now. Now, in this Republican memo, it's about 4 pages long, and it alleges that the FBI acted improperly in obtaining warrants to surveil at least one associate of the Trump campaign by not telling the FISA judge who was overseeing the warrant that they were using that as part of its justification that the Trump-Russia dossier that includes all those allegations that was compiled by that British agent Christopher Steele. Now, this is something that the FBI has requested to review this memo full of these Republican allegations, but the chairman of the committee, Devin Nunes, will not give the FBI an opportunity to review this memo. Now, I talked to one key Republican earlier tonight about why the FBI should not review it. This is what he said.
I'm not in favor of looking at DOJ and FBI weighing in. They've been less than cooperative on a number of fronts.
But you don't think that they need to have a role in reviewing the memo first?
No, they know more about what's in the memo than perhaps anybody else. And at this point, I think they understand the wrongdoing that certainly the memo would highlight.
Now, Aaron, to release the memo, the process is this. The House Intelligence Committee would vote to do that, and then it would essentially go to the president, who would decide whether or not to declassify it. And if he does declassify it, then the memo is public.
All right, so we've got these questions about the memo. We also have this. Lawmakers are seeing nearly 400 new pages of text messages involving the FBI agent that was removed from Bob Mueller's team. Some 50,000 messages? I mean, what do they show?
Yeah, these are showing, according to Republicans, they're saying that it shows an effort by these 2 FBI agents. They said that they were biased against then candidate Trump as the investigation over Trump and Russia was taking shape. They say that it alleges that then Attorney General Loretta Lynch knew that they were not going to move forward on some of these charges against Hillary Clinton as part of that Clinton email investigation, even as Lynch said publicly that she would accept whatever recommendation the FBI came to her with. And Republicans are raising concerns about 5 months worth of missing text messages that were not turned over to Congress. But tonight, Aaron, Democrats are saying this is all part of an effort to distract from the Russia-Trump investigation as Republicans are starting to pursue this new line of inquiry going forward.
All right, Manu, thank you very much. And this is all important stuff. So let's go now to retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Galliano and former ethics lawyer for George W. Bush, Richard Painter. James, you're with me, so let me start with you. Let's talk about the text messages Manu referred to that we have. Put aside the ones that are missing. Let's talk about the ones we have first. As he points out, some of them seem to raise red flags. An exchange between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the 2 FBI agents who were having an affair, where they suggest Loretta Lynch, who was then the Attorney General, knew the conclusion of the FBI's investigation when she seemed to imply, I'll accept whatever it is, right? These texts, let's just be clear, between these 2 agents were sent before Comey made the announcement of the outcome. So it was before anyone publicly knew and ostensibly before Loretta Lynch knew. Stork writes to Page in part, quote, timing looks like hell, will appear to be choreographed. It is her reply which seems so damning. She writes back, yeah, it's a real profile in courage since she knows no charges will be brought. That is the operative text. How damning is it?
Does it look bad? Absolutely. I think at whatever end of the political continuum you come down on, you're going to read the tea leaves the way that you want to. Let's look at it chronologically. In June of 2016, you have that Phoenix tarmac meeting between Attorney General Lynch and the former president. Yep. That's what Comey uses as the basis for coming out on July 5th and doing something unprecedented in Bureau annals, weighing in and saying, we're not going to bring charges, but here are all the things that happened. The FBI has never done that before. Right. We've been around for 110 years. We always follow the evidence. We don't investigate with fear or favor. Aaron, does it look bad? Absolutely. It absolutely looks bad, and I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, and I think the only way we're going to get to the bottom of it if some folks are brought forward and asked to testify under oath.
What do you say, Richard?
Well, I think these 2 people maybe shouldn't be working for the government. They shouldn't be using their official text phone line and to be sending messages to each other for having an affair or talking about politics or anything else. But big picture is that there was absolutely no legal precedent for charging someone criminally in the context of what happened with Hillary Clinton. We've been over and over and over this, and that's a 2016 story that they're trying to dig up in 2018. No legal precedent for charging someone for negligently handling classified information in an email account like that. Zero. Okay. It wasn't going to happen. We all knew there weren't going to be criminal charges. Second, the FBI did conduct itself inappropriately in the election. 1 week before the election, Director James Comey sent a letter to Capitol Hill talking about a computer with Hillary Clinton emails on it, and that was used to spread the rumor that they're reopening the investigation. So they threw the election for Trump. I filed a complaint with the Office of Special Counsel against the FBI, but the notion that they were favoring Clinton is just laughable after what happened in 2016,
at the very
particularly
end.
That last week of October.
Which is a fair point. Now, let's talk about the text that we don't have, because I think the other issue here, James, is we have 5 months of texts that we do not have. Okay, the start date for the missing messages is December 10th, 2016, which is about a month after Trump won the election, and it goes until May 17th, which is 8 days after Trump fired Jim Comey, and the day that Robert Mueller was named special counsel, and everything in between, right? All the inappropriate phone calls between the Russian ambassador, the national security advisor, Michael Flynn. That's a strange timeline, let's just say the least. They say these are missing because they were switching their Samsung phones, have not yet answered clearly whether it's just these two people's messages that are missing or perhaps others. Do they owe it to us to get to the bottom of that?
I think they do. And I think at a minimum it fuels conspiracy theorists, because they look at this and they go, 5 months, 1 month after the election, through the transition, which is the greatest period of time that we're looking at this counterintelligence investigation into Russia's meddling into our election. So, yes, it's going to have a huge impact. Under normal circumstances, and I'll disagree with Richard on this, on normal circumstances, I would leave this in the hands of the Office of the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. They're apolitical and they do great work. Under the current set of circumstances we're dealing with right now in our bifurcated country, I think a special prosecutor needs to be appointed.
Special prosecutor. Now, Richard, I want to give you a chance to respond to that, because when you put the missing texts together with the memo, and the memo, right, this is coming from Republicans, and they say it's information about the FBI. They won't even give it to the FBI for the FBI to look at. Democrats say it's completely political, who have seen it. But when you put all this together, is there any reason to have a second special counsel, or is that ceding to conspiracy theorists?
I would have a second special counsel on this. I've been a Republican for 30 years, and what I blame President Obama for is not having the FBI be on top of the situation with the Russians interfering in our election. It's not these two lovebirds. I mean, they can go off and do whatever they want to do. They aren't relevant. What's relevant is the Russians interfering in our election. The Russians
But you're saying you would do a special counsel related to the memo, et cetera, or no, just big picture, just to understand?
No, I think Congress needs to investigate why the FBI wasn't on top of the Russians messing in our election in 2016. Why was the Obama administration so slow to deal with this? Were they afraid of being accused of interfering with the election? Well, we had the Russians interfering in our election. The FBI was aware of it, and they just sat around in 2016 and did nothing. That's what I blame the FBI for. It's not this stuff in this report. This is irrelevant to the big picture of what happened in 2016.
All right, I'll give you the last word because you had the first. I know you disagree on the FBI, but
the only inaccuracy in that is there was an investigation. Just because the president didn't push it at the time because President Obama thought it would tilt the election. There was an investigation.
Or he thought Hillary was going to win.
There's always there's always been an investigation into that. We worry about China, North Korea. We worry about Russia meddling in our elections. So that investigation was underway.
All right. Thank you both. And next, new tonight, a complaint just filed with the Justice Department over Stormy Daniels, an alleged hush money paid to silence her about an affair with Donald Trump. Did the reported payoff break the law? And Trump taking credit for gains that benefit African Americans. Does he deserve it?
Personally, I don't see a lot of what he's doing that is affecting the black community.
Hey there, it's Alicia Malone. I'm the host of the Filmstruck podcast, a show made by film lovers for film lovers. We have great conversations with people working behind the scenes in Hollywood movies, like Liz Hanna and Josh Singer. This is an incredible story. It is the very first feature film script for Liz Hannah. She wrote it without knowing if it would ever make the big screen, and then
3 months later, I got a call that Stephen, Tom, and Meryl were all reading it and that they were really thinking about doing it. So that was the best and most terrifying phone call I've ever gotten.
Can you imagine your very first feature film being made by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep? Make sure you subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
A developing story tonight. Did Donald Trump's lawyer break campaign finance laws when he reportedly paid a porn star hush money to keep her quiet about an alleged affair with President Trump? A watchdog group, Common Cause, says yes, filing a complaint today with the Department of Justice and the Federal Elections Commission. Common Cause is pointing to a Wall Street Journal report which says Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid Daniels $130,000 a month before the election. According to the Journal, Cohen set up a shell company to pay her. Out front now, Common Cause Vice President for Policy and Litigation, Paul Ryan. Paul, thanks very much. I appreciate your time. We spoke to a former FEC lawyer, Larry Noble. He says this is a legitimate case, but Michael Cohen has just told me that your complaint is, quote, baseless, along with the allegation that President Trump filed a false report to the FEC. What is your argument?
The argument is that Michael Cohen is an agent of President Trump. He is President Trump's personal lawyer. He was the head lawyer at the Trump Organization at the time of this payment to Stormy Daniels. So we allege two violations, two different types of violations. One is pretty clear, that the president or someone closely related to him spent $130,000 to influence the election. Hush money to prevent embarrassment of the president with an individual with whom he had an affair, and who was talking to major media outlets at the time. And remember, this came about a week after the Access Hollywood tape went public. So violation number one, failure to disclose an expenditure by the Trump Campaign Committee and its receipt of an in-kind contribution in the amount of $130,000. And the second violation that we allege as possibly having occurred is that if this money did not come from President Trump, there was an illegal campaign contribution, too. If it came from the Trump Organization, that's an illegal corporate contribution. If it came from some other individual, that's just an illegally excessively large contribution.
Right, because the limit's $2,700 for a campaign contribution. That's your logic there. Okay.
Yep.
So as I said, Michael Cohen is telling me your suit here is baseless. Obviously, Stormy Daniels has denied the affair via Michael Cohen, Trump's attorney, and Trump also denied via Trump's attorney. I guess the question for you is, Paul, if you cannot prove that it was hush money that was paid to her, does that take away your case? Do you have to prove that it was money to shut her up?
Well, first of all, we don't have to prove anything. The legal standard for filing a complaint like this one at the Federal Election Commission is there reason to believe the law was broken here? It's the FEC's job to investigate. They have subpoena power. It's the Department of Justice's job to investigate. They likewise have subpoena power. So we don't have to prove anything, but it certainly looks pretty obvious to me that this was hush money payment, given the timing, given the reporting that Stormy Daniels was talking to major media outlets. This came about 3 weeks before the election. She was
negotiating with media outlets about appearing, and of course she had given an interview a few years prior, which we've all now read, to In Touch magazine with great detail about the alleged affair. Paul, does it matter, though, if Donald Trump knew about the money? Like, if Michael Cohen went and did this without Trump's knowledge, does that take away any concern about the campaign if it was not done with campaign donations, but Trump's personal money?
It definitely matters. If Michael Cohen was acting completely without Donald Trump's knowledge and authorization, and completely without any knowledge or authorization by other Trump campaign committee staffers, if this was truly independent activity, then this will not be. This is not a contribution to the Trump campaign. And, and our complaint is invalid. It should not be prosecuted if there is no involvement of Trump or any Trump campaign people. I highly doubt that was the case, though. Again, we're talking about Donald Trump's personal lawyer who seemingly orchestrated this whole thing. He set up the LLC. He put the money into the LLC. I'm pretty sure an investigation would reveal that Donald Trump was fully knowledgeable about this.
All right. And, of course, as you point out, it was done just before the election. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me.
And next, some gains for African Americans in the past year on unemployment, which Trump is taking loud credit for. Does he deserve it? And the White House sending out pictures of Donald Trump working. I don't know if that's what this is, okay? Can I just call it out, people? Sometimes you just have to say that what you see looks a little strange. Was he posing president taking credit for the record low African American unemployment rate. Does he, though, deserve the credit? And the most important question is, does it translate into votes? Athena Jones is out front.
Order up. At Frederick's Wine and Dine outside Cleveland, high hopes for the new year.
I think things are good.
Owner Frederick Parks, who already employs more than 50 people, says he plans to hire more in the coming months, in part to help serve the roughly 2,000 new workers at an Amazon fulfillment center set to open in this majority black community.
We should have a big creation of jobs from the neighborhood of chefs, bartenders, as well as servers, and hopefully even more management staff.
It's the kind of economic boost President Trump has been eager to take credit for, along with a surging stock market and a record low African American unemployment rate.
It was just reported African American unemployment is at its lowest level in history. I'm very proud of that.
The jobless rate among blacks slid to 6.8% in December, though part of that drop could be attributed to fewer people looking for jobs. And the black unemployment rate has consistently been about twice as high as the rate for whites. Still, the latest good news is part of a long-term trend that began under President Obama, a fact not lost on Parks.
I think that President Trump is sitting in a position where things have been set and already the roadmap was already there.
Parks says Trump does deserve credit for the record-setting stock market.
I have seen it definitely rise, so it's only fair to give him the credit for that.
But what about other promises Trump has made?
I don't see a whole lot. To me, he's made a lot of promises, and a lot of things have not been answered.
Do you feel like the president genuinely wants to help the black community?
That's a tough question for me to answer.
Parks is one of the 88% of black Ohioans who did not vote for Trump in 2016. And he doesn't appreciate some of his rhetoric when it comes to talking about black people, including recently calling some African countries shithole nations. Accountant Shirley Stevens shares Parks' views on Trump.
He has shown us that he wants to tear us apart as a nation.
Her tax-preparing business was hit hard during the Great Recession, but has bounced back.
We regroup and we've managed to grow.
But while she agrees Trump deserves credit for the skyrocketing stock market, Stevens doesn't think the president's policies, including the massive tax bill the White House touts as a middle-class tax cut, are going to help her.
I believe it's going to help the very rich.
I mean, Athena, it's pretty incredible because they are giving credit. But credit and votes, how big is the gap between the two?
I think it could be big. And as you mentioned, they're giving credit, but on the stock market only. And those people who are saying this is the one bright spot for them, for President Trump, say they're not in stocks. So they're not benefiting directly. And we didn't find on balance a whole lot of people saying positive things about the president. We spoke to several black voters off camera, as well as the ones we spoke to on camera. None of them were Trump fans. None of them credit him with bringing down the black unemployment rate. And so you're not seeing a lot of support growing at all for President Trump.
Which, of course, is that's the bottom line that matters the most. Athena, thank you so much. And next, is this Donald Trump working hard during a shutdown? Is that what working hard looks like? Jeannie Moos is next. Tonight, some people are saying the president, who loves to put on a show, was doing just that during the shutdown. Here's Jeannie Moos.
There was a time when President Trump was proud of his messy desk.
And look at my desk. Papers.
Whether in the Oval Office or Trump Tower.
Successful people have a lot going on their desk.
Not much going on in this photo released by the White House to show the president working during the government shutdown. Online critics weren't buying it. I, too, conduct most of my most important work with a phone in my hand and nothing on my desk while staring vacantly off into space. Tweeted someone else, this the photo you'd take if you're visiting the White House and they let you sit at the desk. The president's desk was compared to the one used by that other genius. Einstein's desk, Trump's desk, you decide. The White House probably decided to release the desk photo because everyone kept saying,
the president has been cut out.
Missing in action.
He has been absent.
I don't think that Donald Trump did a whole heck of a lot.
One historian compiled photos of other presidents' desks. Nixon could have used a dozen paperweights. But hey, Trump wasn't the only president to have his desk sanitized for a photo op. Tempted by that vast expanse of empty desk space, critics on Twitter put stuff there. Stuff like a toy train, a toy phone, a cheeseburger, and Diet Coke. Someone imagined he was calling his wife. Hi, Melania, do you know where my hat is? Or maybe he was on hold with the White House comment line.
We look forward to taking your calls as soon as the government reopens.
And once it's reopened, the president can make his desk cluttered again. Jeannie Mo, CNN, New York.
The best part is the hat, that he put the hat on for the picture. All right, thanks to all of you for joining us. And don't forget, you can watch Out Front anytime. You just have to go to CNN Go. AC 360 begins right now.